if you are starting a podcast, what are the first 3 things you should do? You need to understand your topic really, really well. You need to understand exactly what you're going to be talking about. You need to have rules and regulations and boundaries for this. You need to have your title. You need to have your blurb. You need to have your tagline. You need to know what your intro and your outro are going to be and how you're going to be dealing with the content that you are creating. You need to know the platforms you're going to be distributing your podcast on and how you're going to be recording it. Your tech and gear side of things, incredibly important. You also want to make sure that you understand your monetary investment and return from this podcast. How are you dealing with your finances? What information or what money are you putting into this? What are you getting out of this? Are you doing commercials? How are you doing commercials? What are you doing dealing with your advertising? Understand those things. The other thing that I want you to be very, very aware of is your contracts and your paperwork. So for your bonus here, is that you have to understand your paperwork. If you have guests on, you need contracts, terms of service, things that are going to, deal with how people are going to represent themselves and you on your podcast. You need to have all those boundaries written in your terms of service. You need to understand what people are going to be doing when you get there and hold them to a certain level of expectation, and that needs to be clearly communicated with them. And number 5, another bonus, is that you have to be very, very clear with your guests. You have to have a web page on your website that fully spells out everything they need to know about how to join you, how to use the technology, what their expectations are, how things are going to be marketed on your end and their end. Everything that they could possibly question needs to be on your website so that you can send them those links when you are in conversation with them, whether you're going to them or they're coming to you. It is very clearly spelled out with those expectations so that there are no surprises when you start recording. Podcasting, exceptionally fun. Very little work needs to go into it if you do it the right way in real time. So if you're recording and editing as you go, or if you have guests on, there's no editing, you just kind of let it go. It's going to save you a lot of time and effort, but it does take a long time to get your podcast monetized. So you have to be aware that it's a very big investment time-wise and financially before you are going to start seeing a return on that. So know all those things in advance, have all those things planned, and then batch create and get things done beforehand. If you're starting a podcast, it should not be a week-to-week thing. You should have at least a month or 2 of content banked first. Then you can do week-to-week and then put it at the back end of it. So I'm starting a new podcast right now. I'm going to have the first month completely done before this podcast launches so that I can continue to work week to week on what I'm doing, but I'm 4 weeks ahead. So if an emergency happens or if something comes up that I need to not record on a particular week, it will not mess me up. I will still have time to catch up and to deal with all those things. So if you are doing some type of podcast or you are going to be recording, in a timely fashion, you want to make sure you're doing the work up front and staying ahead of it because it is going to not go so well for you if something pops up to trip you up, and you want to make sure that you are very clear and concise about your workflow so that you are ahead of the game and you do not fall behind, you do not struggle, you do not have to take weeks off, you do not lose money, etc. Questions on podcasts? Go ahead and drop them for me.